Most apocalypse movies are loud. The Quiet Earth is not. No mushroom clouds, no biker gangs, no survivors fighting over gasoline. Just a scientist waking up alone in Hamilton, New Zealand, with the faint sound of a radio playing to an empty room. And the slow, creeping understanding that there is no one left to hear it.
Hello, my name is Zach Hobson. If there's anybody out there at all, could you please contact me at home?
Made for $1 million. Sold to 80 countries. Called by the Los Angeles Daily News the best science fiction film of the 1980s. And still, most people have never heard of it. Here are 10 things you need to know. New Zealand's first science fiction film. When The Quiet Earth went into production in 1985, no one in New Zealand had made a science fiction feature before. Not one. The country had a film industry. A small, scrappy, increasingly confident one, but nobody had attempted to build another world there. Jeff Murphy changed that. Producer Sam Pillsbury read Craig Harrison's 1981 novel over a weekend, called Harrison's publisher on the Monday morning, and started negotiating the rights. He thought the concept of the last man on Earth would resonate with everyone who encountered it. He was right. The resulting film became the template for everything the New Zealand film industry would later attempt. High production values extracted from a minimal budget, landscape weaponized as atmosphere, internationally competitive storytelling with no Hollywood money behind it. Peter Jackson watched. He learned. New Zealand cinema as a global force starts in part with a $1 million film about an empty world made by a director who used to play in a band. The director and the drummer went back a long way. Before Jeff Murphy was a filmmaker, he was part of a communal traveling musical act called Blurta, Bruno Lawrence's electric revelation and traveling apparition. Murphy was one of its founders. Bruno Lawrence, who plays Zach Hobson and co-wrote the screenplay, was its drummer. They had toured New Zealand and Australia together. They had made films together. They had built a creative commune together in the Hawke's Bay community of Waimarama, a place called Snoring Waters. When Murphy needed someone to carry The Quiet Earth, to be alone on screen for the first 30 minutes of the film, with no other actors, no dialogue partner, no one to react to, he called the drummer he'd known for 15 years. Lawrence wasn't a conventional choice. He was rough-edged, physically unglamorous, and better known in New Zealand for his music than his acting. He was also, as critics would discover, one of the most naturally compelling screen presences of his generation. Murphy knew that before anyone else did. $1 million, 80 countries. The budget was $1 million US. For comparison, the same year, Back to the Future cost $19 million. Witness cost $12 million. Enemy Mine cost $27 million. The Quiet Earth looked more expensive than all of them in the ways that mattered, not because of what it showed, but because of what it suggested. Empty cities, an abandoned world, the full weight of human absence pressing down on every frame. Producer Sam Pillsbury made a deal with demolition companies to use buildings that were already being torn down, letting the film crew shoot among rubble that cost the production nothing, then clearing the site after. The demolition companies may have turned a profit. The film certainly didn't spend any money on destruction. When it was released in America in 1987, The Quiet Earth was one of the top-earning foreign films of the year. It sold to around 80 countries. The $1 million film had found an audience the $19 million films couldn't always reach. The Sound of Nothing. The most important technical decision in The Quiet Earth wasn't a camera choice or a lighting setup. It was made in post-production. The entire ambient soundtrack was stripped out and rebuilt from scratch. Every city has a constant layer of noise underneath the sounds you consciously notice. Traffic hum, distant voices, machinery, birds, wind through structures. The city sounds you don't hear because you've always heard them. Murphy and his sound team identified that layer and removed it completely. What replaced it was a carefully engineered near silence, not total silence, which would have felt artificial, but a world from which human presence had been subtracted. The absence of that underlying layer is what makes Auckland feel genuinely empty. Not the absence of people you can see. The absence of the sounds they generate just by existing. If possible, watch it in a stereo system loud enough to feel it. The sudden ring of a telephone crossing the speakers, breaking the quiet, is one of the most effective sound design moments in 1980s cinema. The poster spoiled the ending. The film's advertising team made a decision that still baffles people who think about it. The theatrical poster and most home video releases show the film's final image, the ringed planet rising over an alien horizon, Zack alone on an unfamiliar beach beneath an unfamiliar sky. The Quiet Earth's entire emotional impact depends on that image arriving without warning. The film opens with a sunrise. It ends with something else rising, something vast and wrong and completely unexplained. And the audience sits with Zack in stunned, confused silence. Except the audience that bought a ticket after seeing the poster already knew it was coming. Murphy and Pillsbury have expressed mixed feelings about this decision over the years. The image is striking. It sells the film. It also dismantles the ending for anyone who looks at it too closely before sitting down to watch. The best science fiction ending of the 1980s was given away on the box. Bruno Lawrence carries half the film alone. For approximately the first 30 minutes of The Quiet Earth, Bruno Lawrence is the only human being on screen. No dialogue partner, no reactions to play against. Just Lawrence, the empty city, and the camera. What he does with that time is extraordinary. Zack moves through confusion, then anger, then relief, then greed, then megalomania, then something approaching divine delusion. He moves his favorite paintings, including Van Gogh's The Starry Night, into a mansion he declares his home. He races cars down empty motorways. He holds press conferences to a room full of cardboard cutouts of world leaders and delivers speeches about his absolute sovereignty. Then the madness sharpens into guilt, because Zack knows he helped build Project Flashlight. And he suspects he knows what Project Flashlight did. Lawrence makes every stage of that progression feel earned and specific and true. The Los Angeles Times called his screen presence electrifying. Astrophysicist Neil deGrasse Tyson, who made the film one of his favorite science fiction movies, said he had never before seen a main character so casually fluent in science and engineering. A scientist just doing experiments like it was another day at the office. The first half of The Quiet Earth is one of the finest solo performances in the history of the genre. The score went over budget. Murphy didn't care. John Charles, who had been scoring New Zealand films alongside Murphy since the early 1980s, composed the music for The Quiet Earth using the New Zealand Symphony Orchestra. And the film opens with nearly 3 minutes of a sun rising over a dark red horizon. No action, minimal sound, just the image. Charles found the challenge liberating, writing music for a scene with almost no activity, letting the orchestra build slowly from silence to a full climax as the sun crests the horizon. The score later became a standalone orchestral suite called Sunrise for Orchestra. The music went over budget. Murphy approved every dollar of it. The relationship between the sound design's engineered silence and Charles's orchestral score is one of the film's most carefully calibrated achievements. The score doesn't fill the silence. It inhabits it. It rises when the world presses too hard and recedes when emptiness is the point. For a $1 million film, The Quiet Earth sounds like something that should have cost 5 times as much. The survivors were all dying when it happened. The film's central mystery, who survived and why, has an answer that the script reveals quietly, almost in passing. All 3 survivors were at the exact moment of death when Project Flashlight activated. Zack had taken a suicide overdose. Joanne was being electrocuted by a faulty hairdryer. API was drowning in a fight. Something about being on the threshold between life and death at the precise moment the effect occurred placed them outside its reach. They didn't survive because they were strong or lucky or chosen. They survived because they were dying. The film barely pauses on this revelation. It drops it and moves forward. But the implication is devastating. The 3 people left in the world are the 3 who were trying or failing to leave it. Their survival is not a gift. It's a complication. The assistant director watched the background of every shot. Making a film about an empty world inside a city that is very much not empty is a logistical challenge the audience never sees. because the crew solved it. The production didn't have the budget to close roads or clear areas on the scale required. Instead, Murphy and his team shot early, shot fast, chose angles carefully, and relied on an assistant director whose sole job during takes was to stare at the background of wherever the camera was pointing, watching for movement. It mostly worked. There is a white car visible in the far distance in one scene. There is another car visible at around the 63-minute mark when Appy and Joanne jog down a foggy hill. The crew caught almost everything in real time. Almost. Those two cars are still there in every print of the film. Two faint reminders for anyone looking that Auckland was not actually empty on the days they filmed there. The screenplay is barely the novel Craig Harrison wrote the novel The Quiet Earth in 1981. Murphy, Lawrence, and Sam Pillsbury adapted it for the screen. The film they made bears very little resemblance to what Harrison wrote. In the novel, the protagonist is named John Hobson. Appy is a murderous psychopath who actively tries to kill the protagonist. Joanne, or her equivalent, dies. The ending is different. The moral landscape is considerably darker. The film is softer in some places, stranger in others. API becomes a complex figure rather than a villain. The love triangle develops differently. The ending goes somewhere the novel never attempted. Harrison's book is the seed. What Murphy and Lawrence grew from it is something else entirely, shaped by the particular personalities of the filmmakers, the specific textures of the New Zealand landscape, and the way Bruno Lawrence moves through an empty world that the novel's John Hobson could never quite have managed.